My students from last year are in their first year of teaching. I had a good talk with some of them last night. I have shared some of their stories in past writing. They have been teaching for some months now and have shared some amazing new stories. Let's start with A Tale of Two Cities. The first city. One of the first-year teachers works in an urban school district. Many families new to the country and a good number of parents without much formal education. This is not about them. Families come in many shapes. This is about the way the school understands how to teach their children because of how they understand where the kids come from. The teacher talked about a particular reading program, Benchmark, and how reductive and scripted it is. The teacher does not like teaching from this curriculum. Imagine being bound to teach something day after day that you don't believe in and that you think does not do right by your kids. I expect almost all of us have had this experience, feeling awful, having to be the workhorse to deliver something that does not sit right, does not fit with what we believe about kids and learning. Benchmark is just an example of the overall curriculum approach at this school. I taught at a high-needs school as well for a number of years. It was constant work to push against the "this will fix these kids" curriculum mandates. These mandates always start with some belief that the kids are broken and need some kind of brutal fix to make them read, make them do math, make them learn. These mandates present what is to be learned as a collection of things to be acquired in some kind of programmed way. The shame in this case, with this teacher, is that this kind of expected teaching may push them out of the profession. There is little satisfaction in teaching from the script, being an accountant of learning, rather than being fully a teacher with all the complexity and uncertainty that comes from that. When I work with teachers in high-needs schools, I look for a few telltales. One is the depth of the curriculum. Is space built in the curriculum to allow or take students to seriously rich and complex ways of knowing the world? Is there latitude for teachers to be responsive to what teachers bring to their learning, follow their wondering, taking them down roads that matter to them, that are not bound by a script? Where do parents sit as the first teachers of their own children? How are they encouraged to understand home life as a place for important learning, not just academic learning, but as importantly about how to be in the world, take care of oneself, and be good to others? There's a big irony here. I spent most of my years teaching kids from poor and working class families. I also spent a number of years teaching abroad at a school serving families of incredible wealth and status. The curriculum at this school was built around all that I have just described, teaching rich and complex ideas, responsive teaching framed by an inquiry approach to making sense of the world, and curriculum tied to the culture and home life of students. When we imagine what kind of teaching should matter to kids from poor communities, why do we never reach for what wealthy parents expect in the teaching of their kids? Why do we lack the imagination or the will to do so? Now the second city. Another of the first-year teachers shared her experience teaching at a public school serving a wealthy neighborhood in a large city. I have heard many teacher stories before, but her stories were new to me. Essentially, the school community understands the neighborhood public school as their property to do with as they see fit. They believe the school is a service that they should have dominion over. Getting their kids into high-status programs matters greatly to these parents, who vie for whatever the school might provide, always looking for opportunities to make the school show how important and special their kids are. A good number of parents push the school to put even the youngest students into gifted programs, a kind of prize worth seeking. This first-year teacher is subjected to constant stories about how this child or that is the most amazing child to ever exist and deserves outsized care and consideration in everything this teacher does. The parents at this school boycotted the class of a different first-year teacher, simply refusing to send their kids to school. The parents determined that a first-year teacher could not possibly be good enough for their precious offspring. The poor beginner was reassigned to another school. not kind to this teacher, and plainly bullying by parents. My former student, a first-year teacher as well, simply does not tell anyone that she is just a beginner. She is quite capable and still should have the right to be a beginner. We were all first-year teachers once. Something else surprised me. The school has corporate sponsorship. I have long known that schools from poor neighborhoods raise much less money than those in wealthier communities. The high-needs school where I taught for a number of years raised maybe $500 from our school carnival. The middle-class neighborhood school my kids went to would raise $30,000 from the school carnival. But schools with corporate sponsorship? Just imagine the kinds of programs available to the kids because of that kind of money. This school and the other schools in this area proudly advertise their corporate sponsorships on their school signs. As I have written before, public schools were created in this country as a common good. Thinking about these two schools, it seems plain that we are blindly or purposefully moving away from any full investment in the common. About parents. The first-year teachers I met with all talked about parents. The teacher from the urban high-needs school talked about working across multiple languages with parents. She told of a parent conference where 3 languages were in use throughout, with the child purposefully using English to exclude her mother from understanding what trouble she was in. Another had something more potent to share. She talked about parents being filled with anxiety about almost everything. She is collecting story after story of the worry the parents have for their children in the world. The parents see a world filled with hazard and danger for their kids. This cuts across the parents of her students. They are all filled with worry. I wonder how much of this anxiety gets wrapped around the kids, worry wrapped around all they do or might try to do. Some parents have become comfortable with their kids on screens all the time, because at least they know that they are safe and nothing bad can happen to them. On reading. Our state has new teacher performance expectations for the teaching of reading. As I have shared about top-down educational initiatives, they often come down from on high with little teacher buy-in or teacher consideration. This one is similar in that regard, but much different in the sense of urgency built around it. There is concern that kids are not learning to read. There should be. Too many kids, mostly from families in poverty, do not learn to read well. This has been going on for decades. The current attempt to address this fact that too many kids do not read as well as they should is being set out as an all-hands-on-deck moment. We are approaching something that is perhaps the most important concern in education as something in absolute dire need of fixing. I have watched as schools and districts rush to some kind of remedy, too often without due care. I struggled through an observation of one of my beginning teachers as she taught a first-grade level phonics lesson to her 5th grade students. I suppose this was meant to patch something these kids did not get when they were younger. It was terribly awkward and somewhat insulting to these older kids. Getting kids to read is too important to do so haphazardly and in a rush. Reading came up with one of my first-year teachers. They work with poor kids, kids who do not see reading as something people do as part of their lives. The teacher told me about struggling to build a culture of reading, a culture of engagement with books in their classroom. A lot of this has to do with the core reading program, the one that fits with the science of reading, and how it is so focused on skill building and so devoid of relevance or joy for the kids. In this program, you learn the skill of decoding, but you don't learn to savor something in any text that is interesting, enlightening, funny, or emotionally meaningful. Students are learning the mechanics of reading, but are not really learning to read in a way where text wraps itself around how you think and how you make sense of the world. The kids in this class do not naturally move to books for interest or for knowledge or for comfort. There is not a shared culture among the students that books and reading matter. Reading is not simply a skill to be learned. It is a life habit to be brought into. How do we move beyond a proficiency notion of what it means to be a reader to something fuller? Being a reader as something that matters to who we are and what we do. Lastly, my conversations with my current students and past students always teach me a lot. I think these conversations work because everyone involved understands that teachers should always work to get better at teaching, even teachers like me who have been doing this for some time. What we learn as teachers in our talk happens because of this desire to improve, but also comes about because we are willing to not be proud, not be precious, and to be genuinely human in the struggle and uncertainty we experience in our teaching. I think these days about how this vulnerability is so necessary in our collegiality. We make ourselves and each other better at what we do when we are fully real in our teaching with our peers. Do feel free to reach out and give me comments or suggestions. I appreciate the time that you've given this.